Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having fat-free Greek yogurt, almond butter, and pecans. All right, let's talk about maxing out. All right, I get people who are afraid to max out still. And I want to make a disclaimer. If you're a novice lifter, disregard this. You need to base build. In other words, if your max bench is probably around 135, your max squat is probably 185, I'm not talking to you. Okay? Continue to do your 5 and 10 rep sets. Follow your program because your maxes aren't strong enough to worry about. You have no base yet, so it's completely irrelevant. Right? We don't even need to worry about attenuating these upper threshold fibers before you lift. None of that's beneficial to you. Get into your 5x5. Right, get into your 5x5 and your chin-ups and get all that done. Don't worry about it. For everyone else, people who've been training hard longer than 6 months, legitimately training, or a year or 2 years, and I get guys who are like, hey, what do you think my max is based upon this? And it'll be a supplemental lift. That needs to be its own topic. I need to explain in more detail how I use supplemental lifts to determine what my lifters lift. It's not in isolation. It's not me looking at that one exercise. It's looking at 4 of my other lifters and looking at how a couple of different exercises, what they lift versus their maxes, and what another lifter needs to get a supplemental lift up to catch it. If you just tell me your supplemental lift, I have no idea what your max is. I probably couldn't even guess your max within 100 pounds. Maybe. I don't know if you're at a 400 or a 500 pound deadlift. I know with my lifters with similar programming how that works. Same thing, guys will say, well, I've done this with for 5 reps and feel like it's 2 reps in reserve. What do you think my max is? I think your max isn't shit. And I'm going to be honest. I'm not even trying to be mean. Do you know why I know your max isn't shit? Because you don't practice maxing. You don't do any heavy work. Maxing is a skill. And if maxing is a skill, you can't calculate it off your rep work. It's going to be way lower than you think. And people who max, those calculators go the other direction. All right? People who max out regularly, their maxes tend to be higher relative to what they can do for a bunch of reps because they've learned to max. So their percentages are going to be different. Their percentages are different. It's a reason people who get real strong on maxes, we can do a bunch of sets of 10 at 60% and get good hypertrophy. Right? There's a reason for that. Whereas in someone who doesn't max, not so much. Maybe not. Maybe. But over to the point. Guys want to ask these questions, and I'm like, well, you're not going to have a good max. If your best set is a 5 rep set and it wasn't even a 5 rep max, you don't lift heavy. Okay, so what? You deadlifted 365 for 5 reps with quote-unquote 2 reps in reserve. I don't know, you might deadlift 400 if you're lucky. What do you think it's going to be? I don't know, 375. But I did 360, yeah. But you've never lifted anything heavy. You don't practice. So why would you expect to have a good max? You know, and they'll pull a couple of lines. And I'll get to the fear one. I'm just trying to build strength, not demonstrate it. Didn't you say that's part of what we're doing? Yes. That means most of your training needs to be rep work. Most of your training needs to be rep work. Volume, accessory work to get you bigger to build strength. Or don't you think that building strength requires singles also? What is strength? The production of force against an external object. People say, well, there's different ways to define strength. No, not really. Not strength. Strength is tested with a 1 rep max. That is the best way to test strength. We're not talking about strength stamina. That's something different. Strength stamina is not measuring your strength. It's measuring your strength-based stamina. How many reps can you do on a pull-up? Okay, 10, 15, 20, 37, 100. Hey, that's strength stamina. It's not measuring strength. Speed strength. Again, how fast can we move it? But that's not strength. To know what your strength is, or to build strength, you're going to actually have to practice producing maximum force. You're going to have to do it. Number 2 is not interfering with your strength training. So like, well, I'm building strength, I don't want to interfere with building strength. You think doing a heavy single is going to make you slow down in your strength gains? Like, seriously? How do I train? Am I weak on lifts? You have to see me hit squats and deadlifts at 600 plus pounds in my 40s. Most of the time while doing that, I've done heavy singles every week all the way through. Did doing heavy singles interfere with that? No. Heavy work attenuates upper threshold motor units. You actually can get more out of your other building by doing it first. Okay, it's beneficial. And again, people will say, well, I followed you and your advice, and so I'm building strength instead of demonstrating it. What 2 types of programming do I recommend? 2 types. Number 1, conjugate. You max every week on conjugate, on different lifts. Right? Non-classic lifts all the time. You're hitting maxes every week. So you can't claim that one if you don't want to lift heavy. Or I promote 5-3-1 type programming. How often do you hit a heavy single? Every 3rd week. In other words, there's no programming that I recommend in which you go more than 3 to 4 weeks without hitting a really heavy single on multiple lifts. That is strength training. That is strength building. The other thing, fear. Well, I'm afraid to max out. Really? Matt Winning has 70-year-old women maxing out in his gym every week, unhurt. 70-year-old grandmothers. Now, Mark Ripto does the same thing. You ever seen me get hurt from maxing? I'm in my 40s, guys. I move pretty big weights. I've been hurt. It's not from maxing. I've heard Dave Tate say with his athletes, none of his lifters actually have ever gotten hurt maxing in the gym on a 1-rep max. All these coaches tell you this. What exactly are you afraid of? You'll do a 5-rep set or a 6-rep set to failure, but you're scared to max. Which one of those do you think has a higher risk of injury? It's not the maxing. Context here, people. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.